everyone, Foxy Vixen here, your American pinup living in the UK. So, I got inspired by one of my favorite YouTubers called The Real Vintage Dollhouse, and she does things all 1940s, from her house itself to her aesthetic to talking about fashion and food and all sorts of things on her channel. I'm going to tag her down below because I absolutely love her channel. And one thing she did was for a whole week, actually her thing was about 8 days, she did nothing but rationing, diet, and recipes from the 1940s. Now, it started to make me think, what was rationing like for Americans? Because we didn't enter the war until way later. We also didn't have as heavy as restrictions as other countries did, such as France and the UK. So it started to make me wonder, what was that like? Because compared to other countries, we were considered a little more privileged. We got a little more. Our troops were kind of spoiled a little more from their MREs, that they got things and certain products that they were getting that other troops didn't get. So it started to really make me think, how big of a difference would it be to follow a diet for a whole week that's rationing recipes from Britain and the US? So 2 weeks in total. And I was really thinking about that. I was like, you know what? Maybe that's a challenge I should do, and compare the difference from weight to how I feel just in general following this diet. And if there was a big difference, a lot of people say that Americans were a lot more spoiled during the war time, because they weren't cut off as much when it came to what they were allowed to have and what they weren't. So rationing here started in 1940 and didn't end until 1954. And if you're wondering why so long in the UK, it's because after the war, they were devastated. They were hit so hard by everything that basically they had to pick up the pieces and rebuild. And it took them a little while. Whereas we know in the 1950s in the US, it was the age of the American dream. The big house, the white picket fence, kids, a wife, a cute little dog. Like, that whole idea of what you wanted for your future really boomed in the 1950s, along with the baby boom. So that was kind of a big difference, is where the Americans were thriving and pushing forward and looking towards the future and were building this wonderful dream. Other countries were picking up the pieces and just trying to figure out and make sense of what was left after everything. And so I'm definitely going to do a lot more videos on this. I'm going to break down into more detail from the diet, from the recipes I'm going to do for each week, things like that. And this is also going to be really interesting for me because I actually am a chef. And so I have a background in pastry and all different types of cuisine. And so this is going to be interesting, trying to basically cook like a housewife would in the 1940s in the UK and the US, and trying to work with what I was given and really make things stretch and be creative. This is also going to challenge me because I feel like as a chef, yes, I can make something out of nothing, but at the same time, I have to work with what is given to me. So this is going to be really fun. I've been definitely taking a lot of notes. This is also going to be really fun and interesting for me because, a little thing you might want to know about me is I was actually a military brat. My dad was Navy, so we moved around a lot. And one place that we were stationed at was Hawaii. We were stationed there for 5.5 years. And honestly, when it comes to World War II, my most information that I have is the South Pacific. It's because it was basically taught and drilled into my head. And so I know that chapter so well. And that's, to me, is kind of a little bit of a shame because I have some basis of what happened over here in Europe and obviously the stuff that they teach in school, but I feel like I don't have a deeper dive of what happened here in Europe and really what it was like to go through all these things. So one thing I do want to do while living here in the UK is I would love to visit as many of the World War II museums and really get a deep dive into what was going on during this time frame. What were they going through? How big of a difference was it over there versus in the US? Like I said, I lived in Hawaii. So you learn a lot about like the South Pacific and the war in just that area and what was going on with Korea and China and Japan and everything, all those Asian countries that Hawaii basically in a sense was the perfect location between US and Asia. And so like I know that chapter so well that I could probably teach literally that portion. But I feel like the part of me that's missing is what really happened on here, what was going on over here, and what were people experiencing, not just from what you could read in a textbook or watch in a documentary, but what were they really going through? And so that's something I definitely want to take a deeper dive into. I'm going to be breaking down, like I said, a lot of things in these upcoming videos, and just kind of comparing the differences. In this day and age, I kind of feel like this mindset isn't wrong to go into with the fact that everything that's going on in the US right now, prices are skyrocketing. We, in a sense, kind of taking a step backwards, and we are in a sense, kind of in the 1940s in the US with everything going on, with all the chaos, with all the just negative energies, and just all the horrible things that are going on right now. I literally feel like we should be looking at history and learning from it and doing better for ourselves and not repeating the same mistakes. And it feels like the US is repeating 1940s mistakes. I will say this, victory gardens, hunting, fishing, really being smart with your ingredients, going as raw as possible, and trying to make things out of that is going to be your best bet. It is how people survived during the 1940s, making their own bread and making their own pastries and just stuff like that. And I know you're probably thinking, well, this day and age, I could just go on my phone and order, click, done. Yes, I get that. We live in an age of convenience where if we don't feel like cooking, we can just go grab a quick meal. If we don't want to clean our house, we can hire somebody to do it. If we don't want to do certain things, we don't have to. And that's the thing, is we've become lazy. And I feel like, I'm not saying we need to go back to 1950s, 1940s, do everything from scratch, build everything, but there are lessons to be learned from those decades and things that we should not repeat. Being mean, being nasty and spiteful to people just because you don't see them as people is just wrong, is just negative and hurtful. And the sad part is, we should have learned from that mistake, and we didn't. And I'm sorry I'm venting on here. With everything going on and the fact that I can't even get on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, any social media without feeling so much hate coming from the US. And it's hurtful because, yes, I am American and I'm living in the UK. And the sad part is I want to stay here more than go back home because of how hurtful and how spiteful people have been. And don't get me wrong, the UK is not perfect. Their government isn't perfect. Our government isn't perfect. But the sad thing is, here in the UK, people seem to try to learn from past mistakes and use it as a reference of what we should never do. Where in the US, it feels like we're repeating over and over and over again those same mistakes, and we shouldn't. We really shouldn't. Sorry for the rant. Just with all the negativity in the world, I just want to bring some positivity and show you what it's like to be a pinup living in the UK and things that I enjoy. And if you want to know more about the UK, maybe like little mom and pop shops that you would want to visit, or things that the locals get to do that tourists don't get to see, let me know, because that is what I'm into, is to learn what do the locals do versus what do the tourists do, because anybody can follow a tour guide and follow like one of those little, visit here, visit there, type books. But to really get down to it is talk to the local people. They probably know the best spots to eat, to like go visit, to like enjoy things. But this is Foxy Vixen. Until next time, bye.